Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Mark Moyer, author of Win Again, speaker, career coach, and business advisor. And I help athletes, executives, and entrepreneurs reach their fullest potential. What you're going to be hearing in every single episode are conversations with athletes and other sports-related influencers. And we'll be offering you the insight that you need to succeed in life, including advice that will let you jump past your competition, whether it be for a great new job or taking your business to a much, much higher level. Make sure to connect with me on social media at Mark Moyer Coach and go to my website, markmoyer.com, to get access to the tips and strategies that my coaching clients get directly. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email to mark@markmoyer.com and I'll get you going right away. Thanks for joining me today. It's going to be an awesome episode. Now, are you ready to make your mark? Let's do this. Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. My name is Mark Moyer and I'm broadcasting to you live from New York City. And I'm super excited to have you on board wherever you're listening. If it's here in New York, somewhere else in the United States, Canada, Mexico, Europe, New Zealand, wherever the heck you're listening, thanks for being on board. And I'm super excited because I just finished recording the 50th episode. That's right, the Big 50 with Kevin Dineen. And Kevin Dineen, the reason I'm representing this Hartford Whalers hat is he used to be a player for a long time with the Whalers, and he scored the final goal for that franchise. But on top of that, he's just been hired by the San Diego Gulls, actually by the Anaheim Ducks, to coach their San Diego team. It's a really exciting time in hockey. The sport itself is flourishing, and he's going to be overseeing this group of young men that are trying to make it into the NHL and back into the NHL. It's a pretty exciting time for him. This was a great episode. You're going to learn so much. You're going to hear about his life and his career, but also about really some great advice on, if you're a hockey player, how to really take things to the next level. Make sure you give this one a listen, but before you do, go on to my website anytime, markmoyer.com, for access to the previous 49 episodes of the Make Your Mark podcast. They're all great. Also check out all the great content on there. There's videos, there's audio, there's text, there's all kinds of stuff on there. There's articles all about taking your business and your career to a whole new level. Make sure you check all that out. It's all there. And send me an email anytime to mark@markmoyer.com if you want to have any future guests on board that you'd like to refer to me. Great, or just reach out to me for any reason. Without further delay though, check out this episode with Kevin Dineen. He's a great guy, super funny, lots of great stories. You're gonna love this one. Happy listening. Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. My name is Mark Moyer and I'm broadcasting live from the Big Apple, the big city, wherever the hell I am. And I'm pretty pumped up and excited to have for my 50th episode, 50, Mr. Kevin Dineen, who is live from...
Boy, you're in the Big Apple. I have to say I am in small town USA, I think is the sign out in front of the Glens Falls Civic Center, but I'm up in Lake George, New York. So we're not too far away, but not too far by distance, but a long way by scenery and the amount of action. If we both walked out our doors, I think a little different sight.
Yeah, well, you'd be excited to hear that. My view right now is of a I think I've got a lovely brick view, different types of brick, I think. So that's pretty, I had some excitement there, but you, I know, I mean, I think the last time I spoke to you, I think a moose wandered by or something. So that was pretty wild. No? Maybe.
Yeah, well, it's I have to admit the downstaters are starting to discover this area because it's getting a heck of a lot busier up here than it has been when I was a young guy and first started coming up here. But not a bad place to hang your hat during the summertime when us in the hockey world have a little breather, which is now. So it's nice to step away, but it's nice to spend a little talking hockey with you today, or whatever it is we're going to talk about.
Or yeah, no, I think we're going to mostly talk about women's fashion. So no, look, I think what the listeners will be really excited to hear about is that you, even though you were planning on having maybe some free time, that free time is almost gone because you've just been hired by the San Diego Gulls well, actually by the Ducks, I suppose, to coach the Gulls. Oh, wait, is that how it works? The Ducks hire you then?
Yeah, you're on. Yeah, that's it.
Cool.
So every organization in the American League is structured a little differently. We're really fortunate because the Anaheim Ducks do own the San Diego Gulls. So a lot of chemistry there. You get they take care of a lot of the logistics that go along at the American League level. And you know what? I wore my nice shirt, which got we want to have one of these with your name on it down the line here, but was just out there the last 4 days, kind of getting acclimated to the area, and a little sticker shock on the real estate end of things, but I got to tell you, I'm really pumped up because I spent some time with a lot of the people I will be working with daily this winter. And when I say daily, that means we put in long, long days. So we enjoy our summer times, but it's really nice knowing that you're around people that you're comfortable with. And I'm really looking forward to getting to San Diego. So I know this isn't an actual interview, and I'm talking to somebody, but it really is. I'm really excited about getting out there and getting rolling on the ice.
Well, look, that's the whole point of things, right? It's that you want to be doing something for a living that you wake up in the morning and you're fired up to do, you're excited to do, and obviously hockey's been in your blood for since you were negative whatever, right? So you're lucky enough and fortunate enough to be doing something that you truly love doing, and we'll talk a little bit later about how your role, especially coming up, is such an essential role because you're really involved with developing these hockey players to play in the NHL. I mean, this is something where
Right.
they're going to look to you for that guidance, and you and the coaching staff to really take their game to the next level so that they can be promoted and actually play. And I know that you've been affiliated with the Ducks before, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And you were helpful in getting some of their guys really some of the stars that they have now in the minors. But let's hit the rewind button a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about Kevin the guy that was a kid once and grew up, but he was, so you were, one thing I don't understand. So, when I hear when we hear, like, for example, the Beatles sing or Zeppelin or any of the British bands sing, they don't have, when they're singing the songs, they don't have a British accent, which I kind of never understood too much. Now, in your case, you were born in Canada, right? But you've basically spent
Yeah.
your entire life here in the States. Is that correct?
Whole life in the States.
All right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what is with the Canadian accent? I don't understand.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's being around your parents growing up. I mean, every summer, my parents would ship us all. We'd go up to a little town in British Columbia, Penticton, British Columbia, which at that time was a little hockey school that was running there. There's a lake. There's a lake at each end of the town, and there was nothing around there but peach orchards and apple and
Wow.
you name it, apricots. And now that's completely gone, and there's nothing but vineyards up there now. It's
Oh,
nuts. I
really?
went out there this spring with my son, and there are vineyards everywhere. It can literally, it's the only desert in Canada for one, so the climate's perfect. They've got some great winemakers that have come in there, so they're making some great grape juice up there. So how does that work into a Canadian accent? I'm not sure. I think you're surrounded by it. You know what? Some of the best memories I have growing up was, you know what? My dad was a player, then he was a coach, and he was a pretty good guy. So he used to drag us kids down to the rink, and we'd sit there and watch his team practice. And as soon as they were done practice, we'd be out there on the ice, and we'd be spending all kinds of time of our day out there skating with these guys. At that time, things have changed a lot, but I would say probably 90% of that team was Canadian guys. So I'm not sure where that influence comes. So I'll try to keep it. I can go Boston, I can go Massachusetts, I can go New York since we're in New York. I can go. Well, if you look at my the cities we've lived in, we've lived just outside. We lived in Parkland, Florida, before Chicago. We lived in Portland, Maine, so I can do a Maina. We've done the Midwest in Columbus, Ohio, and Chicago. And I'm just
I'm
trying to think. My wife just informed me as we were down there, we are looking for our ninth city to live in 29 years of marriage, which is a
Wow.
little scary. But you say, holy geez, that guy's a suitcase, couldn't hold a job. But you know what? That's the way our game
Yeah.
works. You get a chance to experience a lot of different things. For kids that, we say that's a real detriment. They don't really have, that sense of where their where the upbringing is, but we're very proud of them. They all seem to be off to a good start in life.
Good. Well, Kevin, I think what's going to happen in maybe 3 or 4 months when I speak to you is you're going to be saying, dude, man, what's going on? Surf's up. That's what's going to be. It's going to, or you'll be like, surf's up.
Coming.
Hey,
It's coming.
hey. Oh, shit.
Yeah, it is.
So where did, I mean, look, I know that you were, as you grew up, you were part of a, as you said, your dad played and coached and so forth, but where did you spend, was there a time that you spent most of your time growing up somewhere? What was, where'd you?
Well, not really. I mean, my dad, it's pretty funny at some of his old contracts. Like I was born in Quebec City. We lived 6 years. It's almost easier when I go through this to go by grade, what grade of school you're in. So, I was like kindergarten in Seattle, Washington. Grew. My dad was a player there. We moved to Denver, Colorado. I was there like grade 2 and 3. He was just retiring there, and then we moved to Houston, Texas, where he coached in the WHA. So that was grade 4 through 9. I went to Connecticut for a year, lived just outside of Hartford, grade 10, and then moved to Toronto, grade 11 and 12, before I was off to school at the University of Denver. So I did a little bouncing around myself growing up, but you know what? All great places to live, and it's amazing with the internet now. It's amazing how many people I still keep in touch with, whether it's my time in Houston, in Denver, and
Yeah.
certainly moving on into your high school years. I look at it as that hasn't been anything but a great adventure, and I think that's like anything. It's just your attitude on how you look at things. You say, you know what, I had to go to 3 different high schools. Or you could say, hey, you know what, I went to 3 different high schools. It was kind of a mixed bag, but for me, the glass is kind of half full.
Now, when you were in Houston, was that when Gordie Howe was playing there in the
Oh yeah,
WH?
yeah. My dad brought Gordy, Mark, and Marty down to Houston. I got a great picture of me about 9 years, 10 years old, celebrating Gordy's 50th episode. But
Wow.
anyways, it's an awesome picture, and I just we were, like I say, you're kind of around that atmosphere. You're going over to Gordie Howe's house to hang out with his son Murray, and back then you didn't think anything of it. You're just a kid and doing your thing, and other than he was the kind of guy that would literally pick you up by your ear, put you against the wall, and say, "Hey, kid, how you doing?" And you're kind of like, "I'm good," and all you want to do is like cry like crazy. But it's Gordie Howe that's got you by the ears, so you kind of learn to suck it up and run with it. But pretty good role model to have as a everyday buddy, to say the least.
Well, no kidding. And I met him a few times. Also, just always. I mean, you know what? Upfront guy, called it like it is, and but also a genuinely nice guy, had a great heart. I think everybody that met him and knew him, other than those that may have lost a tooth or two, still
Yeah.
thought the world of him. So, well, with that said, you spent a couple of years in Denver playing collegiate hockey. Give me an idea of what that experience was like, because when you're in college or university, and you know this, and a lot of the student athletes that are going through this know this, that you've got to do a balance where you're trying to play at a high level, number one, and you want to be discovered by an NHL team, that sort of thing. At the
Right.
same time, you're in college, so you've got to focus on the academics to some extent. Plus, you're in college, you want to have a social life too. I mean, how were you able to balance those, or were you able to balance them?
No, it was overwhelming, and you know what? I right now, actually, my son is in that process. He was actually just graduated from high school this year, and he had was supposed to go off to Williams College in Massachusetts to play hockey, and ended up deferring. And now he's going to play a year and most likely 2 years of junior, and just got committed to a school. So we're excited for him. But for me, I went in there just fresh out of grade 12. I was 17 years old in college. I turned 18 like in late October. and I'm surrounded by 24-year-old men. And at that time, they didn't put you in the dorms. You had your own apartment. And I lived with another kid, and it was probably a lot to handle. Unfortunately, you were surrounded by some good people and was able to kind of put things together. And my years at the University of Denver were fabulous on the hockey side, and the maturity learning curve happened very quickly. All of a sudden, it's like you got your own apartment, you have practice to take care of, you have studies to take care of, your grocery shopping, all that kind of stuff that gets thrown on your plate. So a lot of action at a short in a short period of time. But you know what? It's like anything else. You figure it out, and fortunately for me, it was a solid year on the hockey front, and I ended up getting drafted. Went to college for 2 years, and then played in Sarajevo in the Olympics in '84, representing Canada. So a lot of things were kind of happening really quickly at that time, and then I ended up signing pro right after. So for a young guy, a lot of things were pretty quick, especially when my parents were on the other side of the country. So you know what, you just learn, you kind of adapt, but probably could have used a little make your mark back then. Somebody to give me a little guidance on the personal side would have been nice for a young kid. But you know what? I've been fortunate. I've always kind of fallen into being surrounded by people that were good role models and helpful for me along the way.
It's funny you should say that. I think I could have used all that stuff too when I was younger. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
there's but and that's something that I'm a big kind of believer in, is that I feel that there's not really I think enough being done at the collegiate level anyway, because you're dealing with kids that are you come in at 17, 18, 19, and you're leaving at 22, 21, and those are years that are incredibly formative, right? I mean, your brain is sort of not quite finished developing, and
Yeah.
there's so much being put on you. Like, you went through that too, and what's interesting is that they a lot of these universities, they make resources available, but when I was that age, I was like, well, I'm not going to that. That's up on the hill somewhere. Screw that. I'd rather
Yeah.
just in the basement and drink or do whatever. And I, looking back, I wish I had taken advantage of it, but I just didn't know any better. And I think that,
Yeah.
I think a lot of this stuff kind of continues on, and I don't want to get into too much of this, but even with a lot of the leagues, and it's not just the NHL, but it's the NFL, it's some of the other ones, where I think that they make things available, but they're not proactive. They don't sort of say, well, look, hey, Kevin, I know you're going through there's a lot to take on as a student athlete here at Denver. But you know what, why don't you, almost as if the coach like sort of forced all the players to attend certain like classes that weren't
Yeah.
classes, right?
Right.
And immerse them in what to expect otherwise, but that's a whole nother story.
I couldn't. No, I agree with you, and I think that has happened. I think now at the college level, I find the staffs are fabulous. Was out at the NHL draft and had a chance to sit down and chat with some guys. And again, my son's kind of gone through that recruiting process lately and had a chance to talk with a lot of coaches at the college level, and can't say uh, how well prepared these kids are, whether they're stepping on the ice or stepping into the classroom. I think the support level is much better. And take college football. We're talking big business. They want those kids, no matter what. They want them to have success, and I think that goes both in the classroom and on the field or the ice.
Well, yeah, and I agree. It's absolutely gotten better. I think that you know what I want more done of is for the actual real preparation, the concept that if they don't make it in professional, whatever it is, they're ready to take on the world on the other side. And
Correct.
I see a little bit less of that, but that's just me being gripey. That's what happens when you get older and you haven't had enough coffee and all that stuff. But
Uh, well,
not that you would
no,
know
you're
about
right
that.
though. It is right. And hey, because fact is, the percentage of guys that are going to actually make a living out of the sport is extremely low. So you find like you say, you find something you're passionate about. And hey, I've been incredibly lucky to make a living out of this hockey. So I've tricked some people for a long time. It's good stuff.
That's well, well, what's interesting about what you just said there with the tricking up is that I find that, for argument's sake, coaches at your level, it's a sort of finite group, and what I mean by that is that there aren't tons and tons and tons of people that can do what you do. I mean, obviously. And so as long as you're in that and you have a good reputation and you're a decent guy and the players like you and so forth, I think you've got pretty good job security going forward. I know you probably disagree with me a little bit, but I think that I think you're teed up for a while. I mean, this is something that you've done for a long time, and people look up to you for that, for all of the sort of the guidance along with the actual strategy stuff and everything else. Um, Now, I want to shift gears a little bit though, and let's talk about a little bit about your playing career. That was a little part of your life, just a small part,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
a year
Little
or two
run.
of your life, right? But tell me a little bit about what happened when you found out that you were drafted. I mean, tell me about that day, night. Was it a phone call? Was it a Pony Express guy came by and dropped off
Yeah.
a bag?
It isn't, and most will think you're setting me up for a story, and I always tend to have a story for everything. But back then it wasn't like it is today, where the first rounders would go to the draft, but basically after the first round, it was you sat at your home and somebody called you along the way. And I was living in Toronto. I was out on a workout and came home, and my brother Pete had anybody that knows Pete knows his humor and his dry wit. And I walked in the house and he looked at me and he said, "So," he said, "nice job." He said, "Your dad drafted you." So my dad was actually scouting for the Hartford Whalers at that time, right? And of course, he knew that was going to piss me off. And he basically said, "Yeah, yeah, Dad, that's why you got drafted, because your dad drafted you." So I was literally ready to fight him more than I was excited about getting drafted. And my dad sheepishly called a couple hours later after the draft, and he said, "Well, congratulations." He said, "I'm not sure how you feel, but you know what? You were the best player on the board. You know what? We were going to take you one way or another." So, he framed it a little different way than my brother did, busting my chops. But that's how I found out. Just walked in, and my brother let me know, and almost led to a fist fight between us. And then I found out that Dad drafted me, and he was only there in that organization for a year or two, and I would say it worked out pretty well. I had a good run there in Hartford, and as a third round pick, and then I married a Hartford girl. So going back down there for a golf tournament next week, I still have fabulous friends in the area. I love Hartford and our time. So it was a good setup.
Well, so tell me a little bit about that franchise, because it was in a, I don't know, was it the at the time, was it the smallest market or one of the smallest markets,
Oh
right?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
how did
Well, Winnipeg.
oh right. Yeah.
Yeah, Winnipeg, Edmonton. I mean, there's some small market teams, but it was a small market league at that time. Franchises were selling for, I think when the Whalers sold, it was like 12 million bucks for a franchise. And you go, wow, that's not small. But think about what franchises are selling for now, between,
Right.
500, expansion fees, I think 600 or 700 million now. So
Right.
the game's come a long way, and towns like that could support um, major league franchises. So, it was a little different. But my story about Hartford is, it was, you're halfway between Boston and New York. There's a kind of that dual allegiance of, Yankees, Red Sox. What's your team? And you got Hartford in the middle. But boy, we had this hardcore fan base of people, and the mall, they called it, because the Civic Center was literally inside a mall, was around it, would really, really rock. And I think we had some pretty quality teams there, and it was very well supported. So no different than I'm flying out to San Diego this week, and I get off the plane on Sunday morning, and I'm walking through to go to the baggage, and Annie and I are heading that way. and I look, and Federer and Djokovic are. I see it on TV, so just gonna go check the score. Fifth set 9-9. I'm like, oh my god, we are stopping and watching this. We're not gonna worry about the bags. We're gonna watch this tennis because I'm a tennis guy. I love watching it. I've got a little Federer crush, by the way. And I'm sitting there, and the thing, obviously very dramatic, goes to 12-12, and Djokovic, but just to see that. But I pull over to watch this. Look next to me. There's a guy there with a Whaler T-shirt on. So, of course, I have to chat him up there a little bit. There you are. Yeah. Walking the dreaded whale. All of a sudden, you're going to start Brass Bonanza to really set us up. So, anyways, you go around. It's such a great logo. Whoever thought of it, with the H in the middle and the whale tail. You can't do much better logo than that. And it has some legs on it. You see it around. I was in Davos, Switzerland with the family. Went skiing one day. I was over there coaching Canada's version at the Spengler Cup, and we're on top of a mountain. There's a guy with a Whaler shirt. So it was funny. Not a whole lot of conversation between us. He only spoke German. I only spoke English, but Brass Bonanza doesn't get lost in the translation. So it was a pretty cool moment.
You know what's funny is that I read an article a few years ago, and it was all about the guy that, like, some random guy did the logo, some very random guy, and I think he was paid like $5 for it or something. Like, it was where, like, they picked some guy and he did the logo, and they were like, wow, this is great. And then they, here's $5, whatever it was up like nothing. And then he's
right.
But I was like, you're right. It is one of the best logos I've ever seen. It's interesting how that worked out. So anyway, it's been several years there. And look, one of the things that I'm not going to steal your thunder. What's give me a couple of claims to fame with you and the Whalers.
Ooh, steal my thunder. I don't know if I have any thunder left in me, but claim to fame with the Whalers. Boy, I don't know. That's a tough one for me to answer. You know what? I didn't win a cup. That's one thing. Those are the memories that kind of last more than anything. I think we took that franchise from kind of a unique, this nice little team from this nice little town in the middle of Connecticut, and we turned them into contenders there for a while. It was exciting. We took Montreal to a 7-game series, which was probably the defining moment in the franchise. An overtime game in Game 7, you're not going to get much closer than that. And then Montreal goes on and win the cup. And I do believe to this day, for one, if Ronnie Francis would have stayed healthy, but you know what? We scored that goal in overtime versus Montreal. I think we would have had that opportunity. So a few shoulda, couldas along the way, but maybe I scored a big goal in that series in overtime. Would be one moment. Scored the last goal in franchise history would be another one. Got beat up a lot by a lot of guys bigger and smaller than me while I was there. That's probably what a lot of people remember. So,
well, what's funny is that was it you that tweeted? Someone tweeted it. Maybe it was you because you wanted to make sure everyone knew who you were. I don't know. I'm joking around, but you're one of the few guys. What is it, like 3 or 4 guys that had 350 goals in 2,000 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, somewhere along the line. Yeah, that's it. That's one of those ones I don't know if you're proud of or not, for sure. But you know what, that kind of stuff follows you around a little bit, and I think you get a little depth of perspective. And as much as you say, well, that's a hard-nosed guy and you play hard, you also learn to respect the player that can keep his composure and focus right on the game. But I was probably always a little bit on the edge emotionally. I found that was where I was at best. And in all honesty, that's the era I did come out of, because, I can remember my dad telling me at one time, well, you know what, one way or another, you got to get on the score sheet. And the way you get on a score sheet is how either a goal, assist, or might be a penalty minute mixed in there. And where my dad coached in the WHA, you know what, those were some tough old school teams there. And, growing up in the 70s, you look at like Canada played Russia in a series in 72. And kind of defining moment in international hockey for Canada. All of a sudden, the Russians came in. The Russians were more skilled. They were more team cohesive. Canada had thrown this team together of superstars, and you know what? One of our guys decided that the best way to play against this kind of skill was to try to break their ankles, and went after one of their best players, and actually did. So as a kid, you go, you know, that wasn't looked at as a horrible thing at that time. That was looked at as, you know what, Canadian hockey, we're going to do absolutely anything to win. That's the kind of character. Not an excuse. It's not a good thing, a bad thing. But the Russians were working on their skill set. We were working on doing anything we can to win. What's a better way? Development, that kind of stuff.
Were they surprised with that physicality, or did they anticipate it?
Oh, they were horrified by it.
Oh,
They were
yeah?
scared. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You've got these big beef eating Western Canadian guys chasing you around, and the Russians had the puck, and you know, it was definitely a melting pot of two different styles of hockey. But in all honesty, it was the best thing that happened to hockey in North America, because we realized, you know what, there's something to be said for skill, for teamwork, for the ability to use each other, the beauty of the game, more so than that kind of that violent end. I mean, you know, the old joke, you know, you go into a hockey game and a fight broke out, or I went to a fight and a hockey game broke out. It's the other way around. So you kind of, you know, that was kind of always the identity of hockey. You know what? There's cities in the U.S., whether it's Tulsa, whether it's in Binghamton, you name it, that in the South, that Norfolk, Virginia, you know, wherever it is, that the game of hockey did thrive. And part of it was that, you know what, there's a local fan base that doesn't mind to go out and see a good scrap every now and then. You know, where are you going to see two guys sincerely trying to beat each other up? And you know what, where do you go? You go to a hockey game to watch that. So not so much anymore. Fighting's still allowed in the game, but definitely a turning point in hockey in Canada. And now we have guys, you know, we have Connor McDavid, we have players that are just so skilled and fun to see, and it's turned into an international game. So it's a big transition in hockey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what's interesting is you don't really see or hear of almost any, whether it's Russian or European hockey players that were the big beefy sort of fighter types. I mean, very, very few. I mean, they're almost all of them are raised on the finesse game, right? And how to you know, puck handling and passing and so forth. And so I'm sure that was quite a shock. But you're absolutely right. It was also great for the North American sport to really see that side of the game and really see how you can really combination of the two. So that's a great point to bring up. Now, so you played all these years, you played a long time, and I want to jump into the coaching stuff in a second, but what was the point, at what point did you kind of say to yourself, you know what, you know, I've done this a long time, but maybe it's time that I look at the next step? Or what, you know, what made you decide, well, I've got to hang up the skates? Or was it kind of made for you?
You know what, I knew towards the end I probably played 2, maybe even 3 years too long. But you know what, I was definitely cut from the mold that they're going to have to hide my skates and kick me off the ice. And at the end of it, your career has different transitions. I came in as kind of a scrapper and a tough guy. I was very fortunate. I played with some really skilled players and was able to also thrive as an offensive player. And I think I went out knowing that I had to not only be a hard-nosed player, but you have to be a team player. And part of that is you got some young guys coming in. You know, these guys are coming in to take your job. How do you react to that? Well, for me, it was understanding that, you know what, you do everything you can to help these guys and try to show them a way a little bit. And probably some of the best compliments I had a old teammate at the draft who's now a coach in Colorado tell me that when we played together, I'm going off story here, but he told me that he came in one day and our goaltender was in the process. He was buying a new car and was going to sell his old one. So he pulled into the parking lot in this nice, hyped up, souped up BMW. And I was like, where the hell did you get that? And he says, well, Trevor's selling this, buying a new car, and he's going to sell this one. So this kid had only been basically just told to find a place at the NHL level. So he'd just been called up. And I don't even remember the story, but he said, I told him, get rid of that fucking thing right now. Excuse my language. But I told him, I said, that's it. I said, you don't buy a car with your first paycheck. You buy it with your second paycheck, right? Or your second contract,
Right,
worry about the cars and all that stuff on the second contract. So, you know what? You look to help those guys along the way. The moment that I realized, I mean, the skill was just not there, and it was hard to get out of bed some mornings. And it's not an easy transition. It's something that every player, I would say, majority of players really dread when it's time to hang up the skates and decide what's next. And like a lot of things, I went through a real funk when I retired. I went through literally, I had a teammate, Rob Ramage, who's just a fabulous, fabulous person. And Rammer called me out of the blue. We hadn't played together in years, and just called me out of the blue. One day I'd been, he caught me at a really rotten moment. I was like just really down. And he gave me the best description ever. He said, you know what? It's almost, when you retire, it's almost like you lost an appendage. It's like, okay, it's hockey is so much part of you. Your game is so much part of you. It's like, oh, I've lost my eye. Like, you've lost your identity. Well, what do you do? Well, I'm a hockey. No, you're not. What are you? And you go through that, and you almost go through what I call this two-year mourning period of what's next, where am I going, getting out of bed. And for me, probably the resources were certainly there through the NHLPA that I ended up taking advantage of, and had a chance to talk to some people. And, it was a huge, huge help. And we talk about mental awareness until it hits you personally. You're kind of like, yeah, you know what? You just go about. You always consider yourself a big, strong guy. But when you're in that funk, that is no fun. And next thing you know, I had a great job getting out of hockey as well. I was doing player development for the Columbus Blue Jackets, loved what I was doing, but it took Brian Burke and I had a conversation, and he ended up hiring me to coach in Portland, Maine. A big jump for him, a guy that hadn't coached before. And literally the day I got that job, it was like, the match got struck again. I'm like, here we go. Let's and got involved in all the planning and all that kind of logistics of putting together a team, putting together a staff. And I've just kind of carried on from then. It's been pretty cool.
Yeah. So the Portland Pirates, of course. Not quite sure why that came about. The Pirates. Are there a lot of pirates running through Maine? I don't know.
There's a
Go ahead.
ocean on the water. It's it. Back in the day, I think there are probably a few Slim Shadys that went through Portland, and now Portland's a very nice town. We got some of the best restaurants in the nation. We got this incredible waterfront, but literally even in the 70s and 80s, there's guys getting off a boat that've been out in the water for a couple weeks, and they're not looking just to come in and get a shower and hang out. They're coming in, they're going to get one on and get some action going. So a pretty tough waterfront down in the day. Now you'd have no problem buying a little Lululemon downtown Portland. Back then it was getting a shot in a beer.
You big Lululemon fan there, Kevin?
Only on my wife, not on me, man.
All right, good answer. Thank you. Whew, close call there.
Yeah.
Have to end the podcast. Anyway, so but in Portland itself, it's interesting because Portland was at that time was a Ducks affiliate, right? Or
it
not?
Was, yeah. For 3 years, it was a Ducks affiliate, and had a lot of great players come through there. So I was 3 years with Anaheim. Had a young family at that time, and Anaheim was moving to Des Moines, Iowa, which I'm sure is a fabulous city, and we would have enjoyed our time there. But Buffalo was moving their franchise from Rochester into Portland, and they were in a coaching search, and the management in in Anaheim, I will be eternally grateful for. Allowed me to interview with Buffalo while I still had an American League job. Kind of a unique thing when you think about it.
Yeah.
Was able to interview Darcy Regier and I. Darcy was in Buffalo. I was up in Lake George, and we decided to meet halfway in Syracuse. We sat down for about 4 hours, talked hockey, talked all kinds of things, and I was driving home and called me up and offered me the job on the way home. So I got 3 years with Anaheim and I got 3 years with Buffalo. So very fortunate to live in a town like Portland, Maine for 6 years.
And it must have been pretty bizarre though at one point where you one day you're sort of coaching this one group of guys with a certain uniforms, and then the next season you show up at you're standing at the same exact bench, but there's all these different guys in different uniforms.
That's right.
That
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. That is that. I don't know if that's how often that's happened before. That's kind of
No.
it's
No.
good for you. Well, there you go, Kevin. You can
Well,
put your resume somewhere.
yeah. Yeah. Spread it around, and you're not always getting fired when you transition from one job to another. So
Hey,
it
that's
kind of
cool.
goes with the territory. So, and you get to see how other people do their business. I think every organization handles just small little details in a different way. And when you get exposed to that, to go 3 years with Anaheim, 3 years with Buffalo, and then I had my 3 years in Florida. The last 5 years in Chicago, I've been pretty fortunate.
Well, how did you get involved with women's hockey for Canada? How'd that happen?
I was working in Florida at the time. Got fired in late November, and just out of the blue, without any help from your services, reached out to the head of Hockey Canada. His name's Bob Nicholson, and I knew they had the Spengler Cup coming up. They had the Olympics on the horizon in Sochi. There was different things. They were still choosing a lot of different things. So I just called Bob just to plant a little something in his ear, saying, you know what, Bob, if there was an opportunity to work at the World Championships, which is in April and May, I said, I hope you keep me in mind moving forward. And he called me like 3 weeks later, and I was down in the Keys, bought a little fishing boat. I was feeling sorry for myself sitting out in the water. And he called me while I was out there in early December, and he said, "What would you think of?" And offered me a spot working with the women's team. And I was immediately interested. I was like, oh, yeah, extremely interested. I mean, I played in the Olympics as a 19-year-old kid, and a chance to go back. I mean, it's a women's game, so I was like, oh, how is this going to affect you personally? I called a couple of people I really respect for, Joel Quinville, Mike Babcock, Dave Tippett, and some others, kind of bounced it off them. And I think to a man, they're like, are you crazy? Why would you not do this? This is a
Yeah,
fabulous opportunity. So
sure.
I went up to Toronto, sat down with uh, three folks from Hockey Canada, and you know what, Scott Smith, Melody Davidson, and Bob Nicholson, and we sat down in a hotel room and talked for a couple hours, and they offered me the job of coaching the women. So it happened really quick. It was during the year. There was a transition. There was a coach in place. Decided to resign. So I went in there. I think about December 18th. I had to make some cuts within 8 days. I had to name a captain. I had to kind of get to know all the players. I always said, I think my quote was, it was like stepping on a fast moving train, and it really was, because this thing was full force. Walked into a series, US and Canada. We played a game in North Dakota. My first game, the building's packed. The emotions there. Got some great stories about that game, but at the end of it, which the Americans ended up winning, there was basically a line brawl on the ice. The girls were going at it out there. I was like, "Are you kidding me? What did I get myself into?" And
I'm
we moved
assuming you
on, and
with the American coach then, or
I'm
no,
no, No, after the game, you go over and shake hands. I was like, what was that? She goes, oh, it's just, you know what? Pretty good rivalry.
Yeah.
And as that season wore down, you know what? They beat us every time we were playing a 3-game series in Toronto, Minnesota, and North Dakota. And they ended up winning all 3 games. And I did realize, I always say there's that movie Rush. I don't know. It's a Formula One
Yeah.
movie,
Yeah.
and there's a quote at the end of it that Aaron Senna says to his rival. He says, "You know what? You can't have a great victory without having a great rivalry." And I was a huge believer in that. These two teams just went at it so hard. The games were so emotional, and then the way the final game did end in Sochi, we came back in the last couple minutes of the game, winning it overtime, as dramatic as you ever find. And Hockey News reached out to me a couple months ago and was saying how it was it was considered one of the top hockey games ever played. So neat to
Wow.
be a part of.
Now, I'm curious about one thing. So you win the gold medal. Does the coach get a gold medal?
The coach does not get a gold medal, and you
Travesty.
know what? I don't have a problem with that because think of a downhill skier or a figure skater, right? So you have a Russian coach that might be coaching a Canadian figure skater, or you might have the same thing with a bobsled. There might be a kid, somebody from Switzerland is coaching the team from Jamaica. Whatever the story is,
That's true.
you know what? To me, it's all about the players, and it was extremely nice. I can go get it, but Hockey Canada did. They were nice enough to give us a replica gold medal, and it's something that I'll always cherish. And funny, I talked to after being named coach of the team. I bet at least 8 of the players from from our 2014 Sochi team have reached out and said hello. So I still keep in touch with all the players. Can't say enough about them. We won the cup in 15. I had a pretty good bash up here at the house in Lake George and had 3 players come in. So those relationships are going to last a lifetime for me for sure.
That's what. Well, absolutely, and it's funny because you know you remember these things for forever and ever, and I think they will too. And it's something that I mean, look, quite frankly, especially when you play a team sport, these memories and stories and everything that you have, even if you didn't win the gold, and even if you didn't win the cup and so forth, that's the one great thing that sports really does is it really sort of it unifies and it brings together a whole bunch of people, and it's something that creates these memories that perhaps sometimes non-athletes don't necessarily appreciate and
For sure.
understand. But that's a whole nother direction. So okay, you've landed now officially. You're in San Diego. You're all set to jump in. It's pretty exciting. And when do you actually go out? When do you get started?
Well, I just got back last night. I had a painful overnight flight that basically went from about an 8-hour day to a 29-hour day. And anyways, finally made it back here and I'll probably get out there about August early 22nd. I think I still have a ninth grader. Declan's going into 10th grade this year. So we're out there, did a little house hunting this week, get going from there. Dallas Eakins, who it's pretty cool. Dallas was the head coach in San Diego, was promoted to take over the job in Anaheim. What a great benefit that is for me to have somebody that's doing the job that I'm doing in the seat above me, has the idea what the challenges that go along with it, knows the staff. Dallas is we're going to have a little hockey coaches clinic, and we're going to get together at a little golf course in Southern California called Torrey Pines, and we're going to spend 2 days just talking hockey and playing a little golf and getting a chance to chat. So that will be right around beginning of September, and right from there we go right into our rookie camp, which is being held in Anaheim. So it's nice. I'm taking over a staff that has thought of incredibly high by the management that's there, by Dallas had that group before, and throughout hockey, you kind of drop who you're going to be working with, and to a man who says, "Oh, great guys." So you get that a lot in hockey, though, and that's nice when you know you're working with good people. It makes a difference. So about August 22nd, we'll hit the rent ground.
Got it. So I want to shift gears a little bit right now, Kevin, and really just to sort of pick your brains a little bit about some of the advice that you might give. First of all, maybe younger boys and girls who are playing, and maybe they're sort of 10, 11, 12, 13, and they're in their sort of formative years. What are some of the things that you would, even looking back now, some advice you might give them on how to maybe take their game to a higher level? Is it, I mean, maybe just one or two things that you think, because look, that's an age, that those teenage years where, you know, you're a teenager, your hormones are cranking,
Right.
you're a lot of stuff. Like what are some of the things that you would recommend?
Well, it's a nice question. It's an easy question for me because I have an 18-year-old that's a hardcore hockey guy right now. He's actually in Chicago skating for the week, getting some high end, getting a lot better coaching than he does here at home. Uh, I've got
Sure.
my Declan is a tennis player. I've got a daughter, two daughters. Hannah played college hockey at Colby College in Maine, and Emma played soccer at Babson in Boston. So, you know what? I've been fortunate. I got a good bunch there. But for me, I take William. Like during the summer, just those little areas. It's not. I'm not a huge. You're up here at the lake, you can go down to, we have to go, he was going to Albany to skate this year. He's fortunate there's ice in Saratoga, which is a lot closer, but
Mm.
to have to go down there 4 or 5 times a week to skate, you're doing that all winter. Does that mean you can't work on your game? Go up in the driveway. We set up a little area where we can shoot pucks. We got a 4-month-old golden retriever that's just full of piss and vinegar. He's fun. So I'm like, okay, get a tennis ball and play keep away with him, right? This dog wants the ball. The ball's on your stick. Work on those areas of your game, those little things, along with his training program. Now he's pretty accomplished, so he's in the thick of it. But for kids, we have from where my house is down to the little city of Lake George, our town. We have a bike path, and get on your rollerblades. Go for a rollerblade down there. You know, pick up a lacrosse stick. So I think there's a lot of hand-eye coordination. Play tennis. You know, great for your hand-eye coordination. You know, there's a kid in Philadelphia, Travis Sanheim. He and his twin brother were Alberta provincial badminton champions as
Really?
teenagers. Yeah. So you're working on different things. You know, that tells you something. Somebody's got a skill set that goes along with it. Pick up a golf club, go for a walk for 9 hours, you know, work on your hand eye, do different things. During the year, you're going to be right in the thick of it. Again, long-winded. You're asking me things that I can burn hours talking about. And I love talking about this thing. One thing I would say is find what your strength is, and don't say, okay, I know that's my strength. I've got to work on other areas of my game. So if you're a skater, continue to work on your skating. If you got a great shot, you make sure that shot stays lethal, that you're able to score at will. Keep working on the things that you're really good at as well.
Actually, speaking of lethal shots, Kevin, I just want to, I don't want to show off too much, but I played my hockey game late last night, and I scored a goal, and you'll appreciate this because it may have gone approximately 1 mile an hour. I think it maybe 2 miles. I was in the right
Can I
place.
pick it up on YouTube today, or should I
Um,
look on YouTube, see if I can find that?
yeah, you know what? We had approximately 0 fans there, so I don't believe there's any actual footage of the. But that's what I'm known for I'm the garbage guy. So but they count too, I guess. So someone's got to do that stuff. But anyway,
Yeah.
so
Oh, yeah.
I think now shifting gears from the your advice for the teenage kind of years, but now you're going in to coach the Gulls, and these are now men that are young men, right? Mostly. What what kind of advice can you give them, or will you give them as time goes on, that you're hoping that that sort of sticks in their mind, because you know this as well as anybody. When you're an athlete, your mental state really controls your physical state. It really, if you're in a good mood and you've got other things the rest outside of your life that are, I mean,
Yeah.
outside of that are going well, you're going to perform it at the top most, right? And if you're upset about stuff, or if you're something here isn't working well, it's going to translate onto the ice. What kind of things do you want to start telling these guys as you enter training camp and so forth?
Yeah, it's at the American League level, you have a real mixed batch. You're right. It is a development league, but fortunately, certainly in Anaheim, you get some quality veterans that are around as well. So you're coaching. Your age variant is basically mid 30s down to 20-year-olds, and a real mixed batch. And one of the benefits of that is you have guys that have had a lot of experience, and you're in the American League for a reason. Number one, you're developing, you're learning to get better. I always call it, you know what, it's a place you make mistakes too. I don't care if you're a referee, if you're a player, if you're a coach, trainers, you're there. Things that you, hopefully your trainers, certainly medical guys, you don't want making mistakes, but you are learning. You're trying to get better, and you know what? That's what you do every day. You go to the rink, and we're looking to maximize your potential. And unfortunately, it's no different what we talked about earlier. Not everybody's going to get to the NHL, but let's go. Let's get to the rink. Let's get better every day. Let's find a way to see you absolute most. And hopefully that's being a full-time, everyday quality American League player. Hopefully it's a guy that we are grooming to have a long and successful career at the NHL level, and to help win at the NHL level, not just get there and bank some cash. You're looking to get there and help this organization get better. So there's that mental game. There's some funk. You get sent down at the minors. That's always a kick in the teeth. You know what? Let's find a way that you're not just getting up there for the short term. Let's make it for a long term. I'm always a believer that you've got a young kid coming in, the world's in front of you, you got a lot of action, but you always have people nipping at your heels. Don't just think that that 30-year-old guy is there just to be your mentor. He wants to get called up as bad as you do. All right. And there's kids that were drafted the year before. They're nipping at your heels, looking to come in and establish that role. So understand what the dynamics are, embrace that, and get after it.
Is there anything that you recommend your players to do during the season, but during their downtime, whether it's if there are any off days or after practice, or is there anything specific that you'd say, look, guys, if you have time to do blank, I suggest you do blank, or do you let them do whatever?
You know what? For one, I like them watching hockey. I think there's guys that say, you know what? I don't want to watch hockey. You know what? We're going to be living in California, so it's 4 o'clock. There's always a game on when you live in California, right? You've got games out east that start early. You know what? You don't have to watch the whole game, but sit down and watch a game for 10 or 15 minutes. You know what? There's things that you can pick up all the time by watching it. And it's no different in coaching. You know what? You can say, oh, coach's hours are nice. You get rank at 6 or whatever it is, and you're out of there by 2. Yeah. But you're also going home and you're watching hockey for 4 or 5 hours at night too, because that's what we do. We enjoy watching the game, and we're very fortunate to do that. But watch the game for one. Uh, Away from the rink, you know what? I coached in Florida. I was like, hey, whatever you want to do. I mean, like, go out. If want to go fishing, go fishing. If you want to go golf, you go golf. You live down there. What are you going to keep guys say? You can't do that kind of thing. But in saying that, when you come to the rink, plan on putting 4 hours, whatever your time frame is at the rink. We're going to get better there. I don't know, is it all going to show in one day? No, but incrementally, you're going to come in there with your work boots. You're going to put the time, you're going to put the effort in, and you're going to take the necessary steps to get better. And you know what? It's pro hockey. There's a lot invested in these guys. There's a lot of very helpful people around, whether it's on the strength and conditioning side, the nutrition side, the mental aspects part of it. We want these guys to have success. I want them to have success. It's a good reflection on me. So, you know what? We're going to do absolutely everything we can to help you, but come in, be ready to work.
That's great. So this is going to be a little self-serving for a minute, but I just wanted to throw it out there. The way we got to know each other and got a little bit connected was through the NHL Coaches Association. They had asked me to do a video series helping with interviewing, both preparing for an interview and actually doing well in the interview process. And then out of the blue, email from you. So tell me a little bit about, what prompted you to reach out? What did you like about these videos, and how did they help, and that sort of thing?
They were, you know what? They came out in the middle of the season, which timing wise, you would say, well, you got a bunch of coaches in the middle of the season. You think they're spending time watching? Well, if you've been fired and all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're watching games at night and kind of reading articles during the day, and I'm a big book guy. I gobbled up a lot of books. The resources that the NHL Coaches Association provide their coaches is just excellent. And the video series that they put out, whether it's dealing with pension insurance, contract negotiations, is fabulous. And I saw your series, two, what do we call them, podcasts? We call them videos. What do we call them?
Videos. Yeah.
Yeah. So the videos that you did, I think they were both about 15 minutes long. And I sat there and I watched the first one, and I was like, holy geez, there's some unbelievable information there. And I ended up kind of getting a pen and I watched it again, and I wrote down a lot of stuff. And then I watched the second one and was able to follow through on that. And I watched them both a couple times. And not that I was expecting or even hoping that I was going to get an interview during the season, because you know what? Last thing you want is somebody in your shoes. Guys are in the middle of it. You don't want anybody else getting fired. But in our business, the clock starts ticking, the season ends, the transactions start happening. You want your preparation to be there. So for me, it was interesting. And out of the blue, I was getting ready for an interview that I did, and I just gave you a call, or I think I emailed you, whatever. And the next thing you know, we were able to have a good chat. It was helpful. You know what? In our business, there's never any guarantees. You know what? One of the opportunities that was out there didn't pan out, and what do? You don't feel sorry for yourself. You get right back on it and jump in and keep your name out there. But some really good advice and some really valuable information on those podcasts for not only a hockey coach looking for work, but for anybody that's in this process.
Oh, thank you. No, it's and what's interesting in your case, Kevin, what I really appreciated was that that you're a really, you're going to assume that you're a really good hockey coach. You know your stuff around the sport. You also know how to try to extract the best out of the players, but you're also aware that there's other people that know some other things, right? And I'm the same way, where I know I can probably give lots of really good advice on how to do this and how to do that interview-wise, but on the flip side, I don't know how to coach a hockey team. So I think it was good that you were very receptive to some of that advice, and you really, you ran with it. You obviously kicked butt on the with Anaheim and the Ducks, and they were really impressed. I think you did well with the other situation too, I'm sure. So congrats to you for. I'm really excited that you landed this, because as I mentioned, I need someone to crash with in San Diego. Wait, did I say that?
Yeah, you did, and you better get in line, because it's only this weekend, as so people know. This is that weekend in July. Everybody's going to talk about all winter that the temperatures in whatever city on the East Coast is going to be up in the mid hundreds all across the eastern seaboard. So I have to get a little breeze coming in here. Not that, well, and plus the amount of hot air I'm blowing out there for sure. So anyways, yes.
Well, look, we're about to wrap up in a couple of minutes, but there's something that I wanted to shift into super fast. It's something I call the Hit Your Mark segment, and it's just a bunch of quick little questions. But the first one is really, you were just out in San Diego. What's the one thing that you found out about out there that you did not really know about before? What was sort of a surprise to you?
Military presence, really cool to see so many people walking around. We're on Coronado Island, and to see people in the coffee shop in full military uniform, and I mean fatigues versus dress whites, and you know what, just another day going to work. I think that was I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really, really cool to know. And I know there is a very large military presence in San Diego, and that's something that to me is kind of exciting. I would kind of like to get to know some of these guys. I think, and girls and ladies. I think there's
Yep.
a something that you can say, wow, there's a I think on the military side and on the sports side, on the business side, I think we all try to steal a little information from each other one way or another.
Sure.
And I look forward to trying to get to know some of those folks.
Maybe your players could use a little Navy SEAL training.
They did it last year. They went and they
Okay.
worked out with the SEALs. Dallas
Cool.
had made a contact, so I certainly plan on following up on that. And you know, those guys.
Dragging a log through the ocean or whatever they got to do, right?
Exactly. You're out on the beach. And this does happen quite often out there. You can be on the beach and got your towel and your book and maybe a nice cool cerveza, and 20 guys are literally jogging by you with a 40-pound pack and boots and full fatigue. So that's not an uncommon sight in that area, and makes you respect what these guys do to serve. I'm always very proud. And anytime I see somebody, whether it's in an airport or something, just thank you for your service. I think that always goes a long way.
No, absolutely. It's something that I do some work with veterans and helping them with their transition, and it's the same sort of thing where what's interesting is that a military person goes through something very much an athlete does, where they've been working for and towards something for many years, and then when they transition out military into civilian, it's a challenging transition, just as it is for an athlete to transition out and into something else. So it's a similar
Sure.
mentality. And so now, I also know that I've read that you like to be out on a boat occasionally. Um, what is it you like to, I mean, I'm assuming you like to fish, right? But is there a favorite type of fish you like to go after?
Yeah.
Talk to me.
Oh boy, I'm all over the map. I really do enjoy, you know, it's not always about the catching, it's fishing, just spending time on the water. A little more intimidating when you're talking open ocean. For me, when I was in Florida, I would bang around Biscayne Bay, or I was in Portland, Maine. You know, there was a lot of quality shore fishing around there. You know what? Everybody spends their free times different ways, and for me, getting out and just casting and spending some time on the water is pretty cool. But very respectful of that open water out on the west coast. So we'll see. I'll have my hands full. I don't know when that will happen, but look forward to seeing what the west coast has to offer.
That's great. So now, do you have a boat right now or not?
No, oh well, I got a ski boat up here in Lake George, and we got enough crafts around here. Got the paddle boards. You might go out and fish the odd time off of that, or got a canoe out and back, or head up on the Schroon River and maybe fish for a couple hours. But yeah, lots of options up here in Lake George to get out and enjoy some of this incredible scenery up here.
Now, on the Schroon River, have you ever taken a canoe and bent it in half by running into a rock? Because I did that
Don't tell
once.
me you have that on your resume, do you?
Gosh,
You
uh,
do.
the mental resume, it's forever there. I'll never forget that.
Oh,
But that's pretty fun.
oh boy.
But what is the so do you have a name for your boat right now? The ski boat?
I don't. No, no. It's basically no. We didn't throw anything on the side of it. You know what? It's kind of fun because you're here. You got a boat, and we'll take it out the odd time. But really, we pull it out. Everybody will go for a good ski. You know, that's kind of part of my deal. I give everybody grief. You know what? You're not allowed just to go out and go for a tube. You gotta, even if you've never skied before, we got to try to get you up on a pair of skis before, you go for tubes. A no-brainer. There's no talent in that. Let's get up and go for skis. So, but no name. It's a no-name boat. That's what its name is.
Well, I may have to consider trying that. It's funny. I've only tried it once, the water skiing, and this was with one of my best buddies. He
Yeah.
in Ithaca. They have a lake there, and
Yeah.
problem was his boat didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't have enough juice to really get going. So we just kept on getting it, and just like it wasn't enough to keep it going. And I think I personally swallowed maybe between 6 and 7 gallons of water. It was like, damn, this has got to be.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, that's awesome. Well, look, I really appreciate your time today, Kevin. It's funny. I was, we've only known each other for sort of a couple months, but I was pretty excited to see you get the offer and accept it out in San Diego. I think it's always nice to see when you put in the effort to do all this sort of, and to get to the stage that it pays off. And I think that you're a prime example of that. I think that the folks out there that don't know you are going to sort of see that you've got the traditional hockey background and the sort of maybe some of the old school quote mentality, but you're injecting that into the new school or the new way, and you're bringing in some other things too. So I think that they're going to be, I hope they're pretty happy. I expect to see, listen, I'm going to set my expectations fairly low, but I expect to see maybe a 20-game winning streak mixed in there somewhere.
All right. That's fair. Although, that's a lot of good. You always remember we're playing in a pretty good league too. I don't care if it's the NHL, the American League, and there's lots of good players and coaches out there. But hey, that's why you're in it, right? Like the juice of competition.
That was such a cliche. By the way, I got to tell you something. I'm dying to see the guy. Like, listen, you don't need to, when the TV cameras are on, whatever, say what you got to do. But I'm just dying to hear someone say, oh yeah, we're going to kick some serious ass this year. We're going to crush everybody. And not be like, well, there's a lot of good players. Come on, man. It's funny. Whenever I see like at the end of a game and you see that, I think that every, and it's not just hockey, it's every sport. They go to a class on how to say the same damn thing every single game after the game. And I'm just dying for the one guy to say, you know what? Yeah, we kicked some ass today. Or, you know what? We took an ass kicking or whatever, instead of,
right.
It's my teammates. And I just want someone to say, you know what? Yeah, I scored 4 goals today and they were pretty freaking good, weren't they?
Yeah, just drop that. Anyway. Okay, I'll go watch Anchorman again and see what the best quotes I can pull. I won't be telling San Diego to go F it, that's sure, but I'm sure I can pull off a couple fun quotes from there.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time again, Kevin. Thanks so much for being on the Make Your Mark podcast. Clearly, you're showing me and show the audience how you've not only made your mark going backwards, but you're continuing to do so. And best of luck out in San Diego. And I'm looking forward to catching up with you and seeing you in a couple weeks. And
look forward to it, pal. Good chatting with you. That was enjoyable.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Number 50 out of the way, right?
Number 50 is in the books. Holy cow. Thanks again. Thanks so much for joining us today on this episode of Make Your Mark podcast. The goal of the podcast is to help you find ways to make your mark, to succeed in life, and to jump past your competition. Be sure to leave me a review on iTunes and Stitcher, and subscribe to be the first to hear new episodes. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email, mark@markmoyer.com, and I'll get back to you right away. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.